The year was 1995. Paramount Canada's Wonderland was in need of a signature new coaster, and they had their sights on a Bolliger and Mabillard inverted coaster. So why did the park instead open a Vekoma suspended looping coaster in 1995? In short, Cedar Point screwed Canada's Wonderland. But today, I'm looking into the full story, how Canada's Wonderland received Flight Deck, an attraction that many consider to be one of the worst roller coasters in the entire world. Let's travel back to 1992. Bolliger and Mabillard, a fledgling Swiss roller coaster company, unveiled Batman the Ride at Six Flags Great America in Gurnee, Illinois. Batman the Ride was the world's first inverted coaster. Inverted coasters are a style of roller coaster where the train runs underneath the track and is rigidly fixed to the track. This was the evolution of the suspended roller coaster. The suspended roller coaster was popularized by aerodynamics in the 1980s and also had trains underneath the track, except on the suspended coaster, those cars were free to swing. By fixing the cars to the track, the B&M inverted coasters were capable of performing inversions. And it was quickly apparent that B&M had a winner on their hands with Batman the Ride. The novel riding position below the track gave riders the feeling of flight. Guests and roller coaster enthusiasts alike praised the coaster for its fast pacing, forceful inversions, and glass-smooth ride. People still share the same sentiments about Batman the Ride to this day. Other amusement parks were quick to notice Batman the Ride's universal acclaim. Bolliger and Mabillard's phone was ringing off the hook as parks wanted their very own inverted coaster. So in 1993, B&M built two additional inverted coasters. One was another Batman the Ride clone at Six Flags Great Adventure in Jackson, New Jersey. But the second went to Paramount's Great America in Santa Clara, California. This Great America originally opened in 1976 as Marriott's Great America, the same year as Illinois' Great America. In 1985, the Great America in California was sold to King's Entertainment Company, the same company that owned parks like Kings Island, King's Dominion, and Canada's Wonderland. Flash forward to 1992, and Paramount Communications wanted to enter the theme park industry. To do so, they purchased King's Entertainment Company. And with that, the Santa Clara Park was rebranded as Paramount's Great America in 1993. And to make a big splash, they contracted B&M to build Top Gun. Known as Flight Deck today, this B&M inverted coaster is among the shortest. However, it is among the most forceful. And it has one of the best endings of any coaster, with a snappy corkscrew and forceful turn over the water. Top Gun would serve as the park's headlining coaster for almost 2 decades, and unsurprisingly, Paramount started making plans to add B&M inverts to the chain's other parks. But in 1994, B&M already had a full slate of inverted coasters on the docket. That included 2 more Batman the Ride clones, one at Six Flags Magic Mountain called Batman the Ride, and another one at Himeji Central Park in Japan called Diavolo. But B&M also built 2 additional inverts in Nemesis at Alton Towers, which is arguably the best inverted coaster in the world, and more problematically for Canada's Wonderland, Cedar Point opened Raptor. Raptor opened in May of 1994 as the inverted coaster that broke all records. It was the tallest, fastest, and longest inverted coaster built to date. And it had the most inversions as well, with 6 of them. Raptor is not only still considered one of the best inverted coasters out there, but it also set an attendance record for Cedar Point that still has not been beaten to this day. In 1995, Paramount's Canada's Wonderland in Ontario was itching to add their very own B&M inverted coaster, also themed to Top Gun, just like the version in California. However, a certain bird in Sandusky derailed all of these plans. With Raptor, Cedar Point had an exclusivity contract on the B&M inverted coaster. Exclusivity or non-compete contracts are a popular business arrangement where an employee or supplier agrees not to provide a specific service for another party within a certain radius for a set amount of time. An exclusivity contract was most commonly used to prevent a rival park in the same market from upstaging the original park's edition. And in the context of Raptor, Cedar Point signed an exclusivity contract with B&M stating that B&M could not build another inverted coaster within a certain radius. There are some unknowns with this deal. 1. Did Cedar Point specifically request this exclusivity, or was it offered by B&M? 2. How long would the exclusivity last? And 3. What was the range on the exclusivity? The park management at Canada's Wonderland has confirmed the existence of this exclusivity clause, derailing their plans for a B&M invert at multiple enthusiast events over the years. That is the part that is confirmed. So you may ask, why is this even an issue? Cedar Point and Canada's Wonderland don't even share the same market. For one, they're in two entirely different countries. But from a mileage perspective, if you plot a journey from Cedar Point to Canada's Wonderland, you'll see the journey spans roughly 340 miles. Without traffic, the journey takes just under 6 hours. It is unlikely that most guests visiting Cedar Point or Canada's Wonderland will visit the other. So what was the issue? As the crow flies. By car, Cedar Point is 340 miles from Canada's Wonderland, but technically Cedar Point is just 228 miles from Canada's Wonderland as the crow flies. If the two parks were just 228 miles or 4 hours away, it would be much more likely the park would have overlapping attendance spaces. Just look at how Cedar Point and Kings Island both pull from central Ohio. So even though Cedar Point was practically in a different market than Paramount Canada's Wonderland, Cedar Point forced B&M to withhold their end of the exclusivity contract. Now it is likely that Paramount Canada's Wonderland could have asked B&M to build another coaster model, such as a sit-down or stand-up coaster. But this Canadian park was fixed on adding an inverted coaster, themed to Top Gun. And as it turns out, they did have another option. It just wasn't a good one. After seeing B&M's success with the inverted coaster in 1992, the Dutch manufacturer Vekoma began developing their own inverted coaster. And in 1994, they premiered their first inverted coaster at Walibi, Holland, and it was known as El Condor. El Condor was the first of Vekoma's infamous suspended looping coasters, or SLCs. Even though these coasters had suspended in their name, they were technically inverted coasters as the trains were fixed to the track. El Condor was similar in height to Batman the Ride and also sent riders upside down 5 times, but it occupied a much smaller footprint and it was an economical alternative to B&M's inverted coasters. That last point could be debatable since depending which park you ask, I've seen the price of an SLC reported anywhere from $5 million to $10 million. But in general, the B&M inverts, especially the latter ones, carried a much heftier price tag. Whereas all the B&M inverted coasters between 1992 and 1994 opened to universal acclaim, the reception to the Vekoma SLCs was much more negative. Vekoma SLCs were still highly marketable with their unique riding position, and that attracted first-time riders, but they had a major flaw that gave riders pause from returning: roughness. Vekoma SLCs are notorious for providing a brutally rough ride, and that's especially true of the early models like El Condor. B&M track is manufactured precisely to ensure a glass-smooth ride, and the spring-loaded wheel assemblies hug the track. This is why the B&M inverts gave incredibly smooth rides when they opened, and many are still running quite smoothly decades later. Meanwhile, in the 1990s, Vekoma track wasn't manufactured to the same quality. Vekoma has improved that recently, but again, this is the 1990s we're talking about. And SLCs were also notorious for the sizable gaps between the wheel assemblies and track. Combined with the oversized over-the-shoulder restraints right next to the ears of riders, it was almost guaranteed you'd be bashing your head throughout the ride. Despite the rough ride that El Condor provided, parks lined up to purchase Vekoma's inverted coaster. And in 1995, Vekoma built a whopping 7 of them. And for the sake of this story, one of them was the inverted coaster that Paramount Canada's Wonderland decided to open in Top Gun. Based on the 1986 film produced by Paramount Pictures, the sister company to Paramount Parks, Top Gun was designed to simulate the feeling of flying an F-14 fighter jet. But after riding it, many enthusiasts would say it simulated the feeling of experiencing extreme turbulence and crashing a plane, and put me in the same boat sharing those thoughts. Located in the front of the park, Top Gun was marketed as the park's premier thrill coaster upon opening, and it was a hard fact to debate upon looking at the rest of the park's lineup. The park's other coasters consisted of family coasters, 2 rough wooden coasters in Mighty Canadian Mindbuster and Wild Beast, the rough Arrow Looper and Dragonfire, the rough Vekoma Boomerang and Bat, the rough Togo Stand-Up and Skyrider, and the park's Arrow Suspended Coaster and Vortex. Of these coasters, only Vortex was praised among enthusiasts, and it's often considered one of the best of the suspended coaster genre. Some have defended rides like Wild Beast and Dragonfire as tolerable over the years, but Top Gun seems universally hated by enthusiasts. Despite that fact, you could still make a strong argument for the next 11 years that Top Gun was still the park's premier coaster. From 1996 to 2006, Paramount added 4 more family coasters to the park and 1 thrill coaster. But that thrill coaster was Tomb Raider the Ride, a Zamperla Full-Air flying coaster that is one of the most universally hated coaster models out there. Like SLCs, Zamperla Full-Airs give notoriously rough rides. Thankfully, Canadian coaster fans that were previously screwed by Cedar Point were ironically saved by Cedar Point's parent company in Cedar Fair. Cedar Fair purchased Paramount's Canada's Wonderland in 2006 and immediately dropped the Paramount name in 2007, renaming the park just Canada's Wonderland. And in 2008, all of the Paramount-themed rides lost their film tie-ins. One of those casualties was Top Gun. And unfortunately for local enthusiasts, the coaster still stands today as Flight Deck. I have had the dubious honor of riding 15 different SLCs, and of those SLCs, there are only 3 I dislike more in Gardaland's Blue Tornado, Six Flags America's Mind Eraser, and Movie Park Germany's MP Express. Believe it or not, as rough as Flight Deck is, these other 3 SLCs managed to dish out even more headbanging. The lone redeeming quality of Flight Deck is the aeronautic theming in the queue line. Even though the coaster lost the Top Gun license, much of the theming still remains today. But that isn't enough for me to ever want to re-ride this coaster. This video is more than just a standard review, but I would easily give this coaster a 1 out of 10. The coaster is that rough and that bad. The only way I'd ever re-ride Flight Deck would be if it received the new vest restraints. Six Flags New England transformed their brutally rough SLC and Mind Eraser, a ride that I would say was equally as terrible as Flight Deck, into an enjoyable coaster with the Vekoma vest restraints that were added in 2017. I went from skipping Mind Eraser for years to now trying to ride it once every visit. Sure, the coaster still doesn't track very well, you'll definitely get shuffled around, but the vest restraints eliminate all headbanging on Mind Eraser, which is now Riddler Revenge. I really hope Cedar Fair could invest in something similar for Flight Deck, but until then, Canadian coaster enthusiasts can ride Canada's Wonderland's most recent additions. The 2008 season finally brought Canada's Wonderland their first B&M in Behemoth, one of the most well-received B&M hypercoasters. The reliability and success of this monstrous coaster led Canada's Wonderland to later install 2 more B&M coasters. First was Leviathan in 2012, the world's first B&M Giga coaster. And 2019 brought Yukon Striker, the record-breaking dive coaster that ironically stole several records from Cedar Point's Valraven. I guess you could say that Canada's Wonderland finally got their payback on Cedar Point with Yukon Striker. It was just 24 years in the making. And that begs the question, were other parks also impacted by a B&M exclusivity contract? It's entirely possible, but this is one of the most well-known instances because it's confirmed by the park itself and because of how bad the replacement ride was. So that's the long history how Cedar Point's Raptors screwed Canada's Wonderland into erecting Flight Deck. But in the end, Canada's Wonderland was able to build itself into a destination park for coaster enthusiasts. It just took another decade or 2. What are your thoughts about anything covered in this video? Flight Deck, exclusivity contracts, B&M inverts? I'd love to hear your thoughts about any of this down in the comments. If you love this hybrid review roller coaster history video, I'd love to hear your feedback and I can look into making more. Thanks again for listening and subscribe for more roller coaster and amusement park videos here at Canada Coaster.